There's this common idea in military thinking, right, that if you're attacking a defended city, you need this huge advantage.
Yeah, like 3 to 1, sometimes even 5 to 1 in terms of numbers.
Exactly. Because, the defenders are dug in, they've got cover. It just makes sense you'd need more troops.
It really does. Cities are just natural fortresses in a way. Buildings, streets, it all favors the defender.
But what if that script gets flipped? Today on the Deep Dive, we're looking at a situation where that conventional wisdom didn't quite hold up. We're talking about the Battle of Hue,
February 1968, during the Tet Offensive.
a really brutal fight. And our mission basically is to figure out how the U.S. Marines managed to succeed in Hue, even though they were often outnumbered by the North Vietnamese, the PAVN, pronounced Pavan,
Yeah.
and the Viet Cong.
We're going to look at their tactics and, crucially, the weapons they used against those really tough PAVN defenses.
And we've got a great source document here. Really digs into the combined arms aspect of how the Marines fought.
Yeah, it's quite detailed.
Okay, so let's paint the picture. The PAVN and VC forces, they grab Hue. What were the Marines walking into? What kind of enemy were they facing?
Well, first off, these weren't green troops. The PAVN and VC were experienced, well-led. They'd actually overwhelmed the South Vietnamese army, the ARVN or ARVN defenses, pretty quickly before the Marines really got involved in force.
So they had control and time to dig in.
Exactly. And they used the city brilliantly for defense. In the southern part, you had these modern concrete buildings, Hugh University, the hospital, police station, the treasury.
Already tough structures.
Right. And then in the north, you had the citadel.
Which sounds imposing.
Oh, it was. Massive walls, like 9 meters high, 12 meters thick. An attacker basically had to go through the gates, which, of course, the PAVN heavily defended.
So they didn't just move in, they actively fortified these places.
Absolutely. They dug trenches, fighting holes, bunkers around these strong points, layered defense.
And used the height, too.
Definitely. Up on the citadel walls, especially near the gates, they set up positions. And in the buildings, upper stories and rooftops were perfect for machine guns, rockets, snipers. Gave them great observation and fields of fire.
And it sounds like these positions weren't isolated.
Not at all. Very much mutually supporting. Firing from one position would cover the approach to another, so if you attacked one spot, you were taking fire from others too. Really complicated things for the Marines.
You mentioned they weren't just going to fight to the death in one spot either.
Right, that's the defense in-depth strategy. When a position was about to be overrun, they'd often pull back to another pre-planned defensive line deeper in the city.
Keep the defense intact, keep causing casualties. Smart, but tough to fight against.
Very tough. They bled the attackers and preserved their own forces.
Okay, so that's the setup. Now, the Marines arrive. What was their readiness for this kind of urban slugfest?
Well, here's the thing. The Marines, they didn't really have specific formal urban warfare training at that point, not on this scale.
Really? So they were learning on the job.
Pretty much. Adapting under fire against a very determined enemy who knew the terrain.
Wow. Okay, so how did they even start planning attacks in that situation?
Planning usually happened the night before, at the battalion and company level. Battalion command would set objectives, allocate resources, tanks, onto systems, mortars, and then the company commanders would figure out the detailed tactics.
What did a typical Marine company look like going into an assault?
Standard setup is 3 rifle platoons. Ideally, one would be the main assault element, one providing covering fire suppression, and one held in reserve.
But you said ideally.
Yeah, because casualties mounted quickly in Hue.
Yeah.
Very quickly. So that reserve platoon, often it just wasn't there. They had to go in with just the assault and the support guys.
Tough. You mentioned the PAVN tactic of falling back.
Yeah.
How did the Marines try and counter that?
A key thing they tried to do, whenever possible, was to secure buildings flanking their main target first.
Get on their sides.
Exactly. Then they could pour fire into the rear of the target building, cut off those escape routes the PAVN like to use.
Makes sense. And they use mortars and artillery, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely critical. As the infantry moved up, the mortars and artillery would shift fire to the back of the building, trying to catch defenders retreating or disrupt them.
So a coordinated push. Let's talk about how that assault actually unfolded. You mentioned the source describes an ideal sequence.
Yeah, sort of a best-case scenario they developed. It would start, if possible, with mortars and artillery hitting the rooftops and upper floors, suppressing defenders there.
Keep their heads down.
Right. Then the tanks move up. They'd use their machine guns, their main cannon, to blast trenches, windows, any visible enemy positions. And interestingly, when the PAVN fired back,
It gave away their positions.
precisely, it helped the tanks identify the really dangerous spots like RPGs or heavy machine guns and focus fire on them.
Okay, so suppression first, then what?
Then came the 106 millimeter recoilless rifles. These were the main breaching tool.
Those could be on tripods or mules or the ontos, right?
Yep. And they'd use high explosive plastic rounds, HEP rounds, to literally blow holes in the walls. The Marines learned fast that going through a defended door or window was suicide. Making your own door was much safer.
Create the breach. Smart. What followed the breach?
Often, CS gas, tear gas. They'd fire that into the building to try and flush defenders out or make it hard for them to fight effectively.
Nasty stuff in close quarters.
Definitely. And right after the gas, smoke. Lots of smoke from grenades, mortars, artillery, anything to obscure the Marines moving towards the breach.
Cover their approach.
Exactly. Then the infantry goes in wearing gas masks through the hole blown by the 106.
And once they're inside, how do they clear it?
Room clearing was usually done by pairs or small fire teams. Standard procedure: toss a grenade in, wait for the bang, then immediately rush in, firing in designated sectors to cover the whole room. Very fast, very violent.
Sounds incredibly dangerous. And you said this ideal sequence, it didn't always happen that way.
Oh, far from it. That was the textbook plan. But reality meant maybe they were short on CS gas or masks, maybe the tank support got held up, maybe mortar ammo was low.
So they had to improvise constantly.
All the time. Company and platoon leaders making calls on the fly with whatever they had available. Adaptability was key.
Let's dig into those weapons a bit more. The 106 millimeter recoilless rifle, why was it so good for breaching compared to, say, the tank's main gun?
Just packed a bigger punch, basically. The 106 millimeter HEP round had more explosive filler than the tank's 90 millimeter shells. It could, reliably knock down a whole section of wall, not just punch a hole.
Big difference. And you mentioned the different ways to deploy it. Tripod, mule, ontos.
Right. Tripod was standard, but heavy, slow to set up, and the crew was totally exposed. The mule, that little flatbed vehicle, made it more mobile, faster to get into action, but still no protection for the crew.
Which brings us to the ontos.
Which was the best option by far in this environment.
You said earlier it might have been as important as the tanks. Why?
Well, think about it. It's tracked, so it could handle the rubble. It had armor, protecting the crew from small arms and fragments, which was huge, and the firepower.
106 millimeter recoilless rifles.
6 of them. Fired singly, in pairs, or all 6 at once. A full volley could just demolish a wall or bunker.
Wow. How did they use it tactically?
Often paired with tanks. The tank would provide heavy suppressive fire, drawing attention, while the ontos, which was a bit more nimble, would dart forward, fire its volley at a specific strongpoint or wall section, and then quickly pull back behind the tank to reload. Sort of a shoot-and-scoot thing. Made it very effective and surprisingly survivable.
Sounds like a perfect urban assault gun almost.
Oh, okay.
What about the main battle tank, the M48 Patton? How did it fare?
The Pattons were absolutely vital, even though they didn't have many at the start, maybe only 2 operational in the whole city at one point.
Really? Only 2?
Initially, yeah. But their heavy armor was just incredibly important. It was pretty much immune to most PAVN anti-tank weapons at the time. This gave the infantry crucial mobile protected firepower.
But the crews weren't totally safe. You mentioned risks.
No, definitely not. RPGs hitting the turret could cause spalling inside bits of metal flying around. That injured crews. And commanders, sticking their heads out of the hatch to see better, were prime targets for snipers. Several were killed that way.
So a tough vehicle, but dangerous to operate.
Very. And just the constant hammering of hits, even non-penetrating ones, took a toll. Some tanks went through multiple crews due to casualties. But the key thing, as LTC Cheatham pointed out, was their survivability.
The commander of 15 Marines.
Right. He said they took numerous hits, even penetrations, but only one M48 was actually destroyed in the whole battle. That protection allowed them to stay in the fight and keep providing that essential suppressive fire for the infantry assaults.
That's a stark contrast to the South Vietnamese ARVN tanks, the M41s.
Huge difference. The ARVN had M41 Walker Bulldogs, which are light tanks, much thinner armor.
And they took heavy losses.
Yeah, in one early counterattack, they lost 9 M41s, destroyed or abandoned. They were just too vulnerable to PAVN recoilless rifles and RPGs. It apparently got so bad that some ARVN crews became reluctant to lead assaults.
Underscores the patent's value then. What other weapons played a role? You mentioned mortars earlier.
Mortars were great in cities because of their high-angle fire. They could drop rounds behind buildings into courtyards, places direct fire weapons couldn't reach. Good for suppression and for firing smoke rounds to cover advances. Later, they even brought in heavy 4.2-inch mortars.
Any other fire support? Gun trucks, air power?
Yeah, briefly, there were improvised gun trucks and M42 Dusters, those twin 40-millimeter anti-aircraft guns used in a ground role. Devastating against infantry, used mostly for convoy protection early on. Naval gunfire support was available from ships offshore, but less useful in the really tight city blocks, better for open areas.
And air power?
Initially restricted, partly due to weather, partly rules of engagement. Accuracy was always a problem in dense urban areas, risking friendly casualties or hitting civilians. Helicopters were mainly vital for logistics, especially after a key bridge was destroyed, but took casualties from PAVN anti-aircraft fire, so their direct combat role was limited.
Okay, so bring it all together. The Marines were outnumbered, facing experienced defenders in prepared positions.
Yeah, on paper, the PAVN should have been able to hold out much longer, especially with the limits on U.S. heavy firepower initially.
But the Marines prevailed. Why?
Well, it was partly a joint effort. All U.S. services and the ARVN were involved, but the document really stresses the most important factor was the Marines' effective use of combined arms.
That integration we talked about.
Exactly. Skillfully coordinating tanks, the ontos, infantry fire, mortars. That synergy was key. They used fire and maneuver in a way. The PAVN, essentially a well-equipped light infantry force, couldn't really counter effectively. They didn't have that balanced combined arms capability themselves.
So the combined arms approach acted as a force multiplier.
Precisely. It compensated for the numbers disadvantage and allowed the Marines to break down those formidable defenses piece by piece.
So the key takeaway from Hugh seems to be that tactical skill, innovation, and especially that effective integration of different weapons, combined arms, can overcome numerical inferiority and prepare defenses, even in the toughest environment like a city.
That's absolutely the core lesson here, which, makes you think.
Yeah.
Well, that was 1968. Cities have changed. Weapons have evolved dramatically since then. How much do these lessons from Hughes still apply today? What new technologies or tactics might change the whole equation for urban warfare in the future?
It's definitely something to ponder.